is my honor and privilege now to bring this next panel, this next discussion about the film Sylvie's Love. This beautiful film, it's about love and romance and music and two people finding each other. And I think it's just, it's what we all need and love in this world. So I would like to bring forth our moderator, Miss Sydney Scott, who will lead the discussion.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining me and the cast of Sylvie's Love. We have the stars, the writer, director, and producer here today. So I'm not going to take up too much more of your time just chatting. I'm going to introduce the panel. So let's welcome to the stage our stars, Tessa Thompson. Oh, sorry. Sorry. I was like, oh no.
She was trying to get my face together, but that's what you got.
Namdi Asamoah. Writer, director Eugene Ash. And producer Gabrielle Glore.
Hey.
I feel like sitting in the middle of like part of the cast almost. It's kind of weird. Ooh, okay. So before we kick things off, we're going to start with a little clip of the film. I ask that you not record this clip. We want to, keep it here for everyone. But Tessa, if you'd like to kind of set up what everyone's going to see.
Sure. Namdi's character, Robert, is a jazz musician or an aspiring jazz musician. He comes to work in the record shop of a man whose daughter is my character, Sylvie. And he's sort of cleaning up downstairs, and he happens upstairs, and he finds Sylvie in a moment of her own, not realizing that she's being watched. She's sort of singing along to a Bill Haley and the Comets song called "See You Later, Alligator." And she finds herself very embarrassed to be to be seen by him in that moment, and they find themselves locked downstairs in a basement and have this ensuing conversation. It's not back there. You see how I tried it? Where is it? Oh.
Stuck down here till Daddy gets back, huh?
Yep.
Say, can I have one? Thank you. How do you use this thing? Hey, you've got a French light.
What's that?
French light. It's when you light a cigarette and it only lights up halfway. It's supposed to mean you're gonna fall in love.
Well, you have one too. What's that supposed to mean?
So Daddy tells me you're a saxophone player.
Yep. I'm actually in town with my band from Detroit for the summer. I'm playing over at the Blue Morocco.
Are you any good?
Depends on what you like. It's not Bill Haley and the Comets.
Well, I like all sorts of music. You have to, working in a record store and all, So you can suggest music to customers. For instance, you got most brilliant corners, and you're a saxophone player, so I'm guessing you like Sonny Rollins.
Uh-huh.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Well, then I would recommend his latest album, Way Out West, where he leads a trio with him on sax and a bassist and a drummer. Unless, of course, you already have it.
I don't.
See?
Yeah. So what about your fiance? What type of music's he like?
Richard.
So Eugene, I'd love to hear from you about kind of the breakdown of this clip, and because we see Sylvie and Robert, that spark kind of start there where they're falling in love, and why you chose this clip to show here at Macro.
Yeah, I think it's really they bond over music, and this is sort of for Robert. It's the first person he has met who has the same kind of knowledge and interest in music that he has. Who's not a musician. She works in a record store though, and for Sylvie, I think it's someone taking an interest in her ideas, and that's really what happens in the movie is that. You know, it takes place between 1957 and 1962, and she's kind of getting her own agency and her own sense of self, and so someone thinking of her as an intelligent person and respecting her opinion is something that's really important, and I think that's something that turns her on about Robert.
And Tessa and Nnamdi, if you could talk about kind of building that chemistry, because like I said, we see that spark. So what was it like working together to get to that point of building the chemistry between your characters?
First of all, that was painful to listen to. I didn't even look up. But what was it like building the chemistry? I mean, for me, it was great. It was really easy. I had known Tessa for, I think, a few years before we started shooting, so we already had that relationship. And obviously, that doesn't mean it's going to translate to the film. But she's such a giving scene partner that I feel like she could have chemistry with, you know, anyone that's willing to go there with her and be as vulnerable with her. So it wasn't difficult for me at all. We kind of sparked pretty quickly.
Trying to say I'm a cheap date? I don't know what chemistry even is. I think, you know, I really respected Nnamdi. I'd seen him in a film that was here some years ago called Crown Heights that he made with Lakeith Stanfield.
Y'all saw Crown Heights? Y'all didn't see Crown Heights.
I saw it. I loved him in that film so much. I thought he was so fantastic in it. And then he came along and had this idea for the script with Eugene. I sat with Eugene, and he talked about, you know, centering two black people in love at a time and in a style, a classic style of a film in which we have often been ignored. And I love that idea. And then I went to see Nnamdi in a play, because you never know, you know, movie magic, they can edit us, which I am grateful for it. You know, there's some moments that you don't want immortalized in front of people.
Wait. You said you were coming to the play just because you wanted to support me.
No.
So that was a litmus test?
That ain't it, fam. I came to make sure that it wasn't editing.
Wow.
I said, let me see. Let me see how it really goes down. So I came to support you, of course. I came to support you, but I also came, you know, with my own self-interest, which was, is this someone, you know, that I'm going to be excited to be in scenes with? And theater is, you know, it's not the holy grail. Actors can work in, you know, different mediums, and everyone has their place. But I think there is something to theater in terms of being able to see if someone from start to finish can take you through a narrative and has dexterity. And I like working with actors that have dexterity because they make me better. So I wanted to see, and he was brilliant. He was so good. So I thought, okay, this is a person I really want to work with. And for me, chemistry is like professional chemistry is when you can go like, do I want to play with you? Like, do you excite me? And people that work hard excite me. Nnamdi spent 2 years, right, learning to play the sax. How long?
Year and a half.
A year and a half, yeah. Learning to play the saxophone. And someone with a great amount of work ethic is someone that excites me. So that just on paper, I felt artistically turned on by. And then Eugene wrote a great script in which you really got the sense of these two people falling in love in the way that you do when you're swept away by someone that not only you see something sort of special in, but they make you see things in yourself that you didn't know existed. I think that kind of love takes you by surprise. So that embedded chemistry just existed in the script, and we just got to play it.
Awesome.
Namdi's on Broadway right now, by the way, in the Soldiers play. If anybody gets to
Shout
check it
out. Thank you.
Hey! So he's the really real, right?
Yes. Certainly has the range. I love how you were like, I liked him, I heard about him, but I had to double check. I just had to make sure. But talk to us a little bit about what it was about Robert and Sylvie that resonated with you and how you built these characters, because as Tessa mentioned, you spent 2 years learning to play the sax. You put all this work into it. So tell me about building Robert as a character and then also building Sylvie as a character.
Yeah, there was that, and there was also like I had never thought about doing a love story. That was just not in I didn't think that was the range I was gonna deal with. But the script was just so beautiful, and I fell in love with it. So I kind of had to get in touch with my romantic side, which I don't know. I mean, it was a lot of hard work to get there. But yeah, it was a lot of work, and it's also a lot of work just going into that period. We were talking earlier about how you're dressed today sort of influences how you walk and how you sit and how you laugh versus how we were dressed in the 50s and 60s and how that influences you. So I think the easiest thing for me, like we were saying earlier, was getting the costumes on. Phoenix Mello, who I think might be here, shout out to her. She's our costume designer. She worked with Eugene, night and day, figuring out what we were gonna wear. And I think the moment that I put on the pants that go up to like you, you just drop into the character. I think that was the easiest part for me, just getting that part down.
What am I answering? Oh, how we got
Yes,
into
creating
character?
Sylvie.
Oh, creating Sylvie. Oh, God. Well, I was so lucky, I was talking about it with Eugene in terms of who this woman is, and also I've was sort of curious about how she sounded. So we talked a lot about women like Diane Carroll, which meant that I just got to watch Diane Carroll again and listen to her interviews and be excited and intimidated by that amount of grace and poise. To realize that so many women from the period had that because they had to. So it is both a blessing and a curse to have to be sort of extraordinary in the way they had to be. So I thought a lot about that. I thought about my grandmother. I thought about, the shoulders of so many women that I am, undoubtedly on in terms of working in this industry now. So, yeah, it was a gift, and also, so many of the films that Eugene sent to me, some of them, centered Black love, like getting to watch Love Jones for the 15th time. And remember what that meant to me at a time when I was falling in love, falling in Black love, watching Love Jones.
How many movies did Eugene send?
Listen, I asked him about a week out, because I like to do my own work that is not fettered by anyone else, anything that has existed before. And then about a week out, I was like, okay, cool, so what films? I thought he was going to send me like 5 or 6. He sent me about 62 films. Including every single one of A Star Is Born.
And you watched them all, though.
I did.
To
I
your
watched.
credit,
I watched every single one. But I will say, and this is not because Eugene is not. Obviously, he's an incredibly varied. He ingests a lot of film. He's well versed in film, so it's not to his discredit. There were not a tremendous amount of films that centered Black people, because if you're talking about films both from that period, from the 50s and 60s, and about that period, there are not many films with us at the center of them, and that is just the truth. So there was this idea of making a film that felt like it could be revisionist in a way, that we could make a film in the spirit of those films that would say, what kind of films could we have made at that time if we were allowed to tell our stories and be central to them? So I loved that idea and thought a lot about that when I was, thinking about Sylvie. She herself is a young woman that has aspirations to produce television at a time when there are not, many examples of that. So I thought about and I think a lot of people experience this where you aspire to do things that not a lot of people have gotten to do, and then you get there and you realize that you feel alone. I feel really grateful to get to make work at a time where there are more of us, and where we can say we want more of us. We don't actually being the exception to the rule is not enough. We want to change the rules, and that's something that Sylvie does in her own way in this film.
So Eugene, I'd love to hear about why you chose to set the film in the late 50s, early 60s. What about this era is important to you, and why did you feel that this is something that needed to be on screen?
I think the genesis of it was, my parents got married during that time. So looking at all of these pictures of black folks from that time in my photo albums, I just felt like it wasn't really represented on screen. And, we certainly, most of the period pieces that we see, because we don't have a lot of opportunity to tell our stories, we kind of told the big important stories first, like the Selmas and the stories of our adversity. We absolutely needed to see that, and people needed to understand what we went through. But now I think people need to understand us through our humanity, So this is a period piece set in 1962. The civil rights movement is going on, but it's not framed through our adversity. Nothing bad happens to them because they're black. It's a love story. And, when you think of all these people from that time, like Nancy Wilson and Miles Davis and all of these beautiful black people that were around, we don't get a chance to, where's our Mad Men, and where's our Breakfast at Tiffany's? And so it is a little bit of a corrective, and I was trying to remake history or a little bit of revisionist history and rewrite, trying to make a movie that never got made that I wish had gotten made. So that's what I did, or that's what we did, rather.
And Gabrielle, I would love to know, as a producer, what was it about the film that you were like, I have to be attached to this project?
It was, and first of all, there are a few other producers that are in the room, so I want to acknowledge it definitely takes a village to make a film like this, and we feel like we've really made a special film, and we have so much of our cast and crew that has come that we've just kind of run into today. So I just want to say thank you to all of the Sylvie's Love crew that has their fingerprints. I see some people over here, it's hard to see, but thank you for all that you've done. So for me, I started this journey with Eugene 6 years ago. We met at a film festival in Atlanta and stayed in touch. He sent me the project to take a look at. I read it and immediately responded to the authenticity of just the writing, the period. It felt very familiar to me. It reminded me of my mother in many ways, just listening to jazz. And, I've heard Eugene also talk about kind of as a young kid, you're listening to jazz and you don't appreciate it as much as your parents do until you hit a certain age or something just clicks. And now it's, the movie that you'll hear in our film is all that I listen to all the time. And it's just something that I don't know if it's the old soul or what it is, but it's something that I appreciate. I appreciated the glamour. I appreciated the everyday elegance. So we talk about just the photo albums that we go through and just the joy that we see in celebrations and everyday life. And again, we might see milestone moments, but just the everyday elegance of how fabulous and glamorous, our community looked and how they were doing things of importance. So just the women's movement piece that we talked about is something that is subtle, but it's very present at the same time. And, it's those kind of things that we wanted to bring out in a film that you traditionally don't see.
And Eugene, I'd love to hear kind of the role that music plays in this film, kind of the importance of it, seeing as how Sylvie's father is a record store owner and Robert is a saxophonist. For you, what were you thinking as far as music when you were writing and considering putting together the project?
Yeah, for me, it often when I'm writing something, it just kind of starts with what I'm listening to. And I may get a vibe from something, and just decide oh wow, this really fits the scene. Or sometimes I'll write something like this, the movie, as you'll see, those of you who see it this week, it opens with this Nancy Wilson song, The Nearness of You. And that's been with the script since the very beginning, because it's like, I just saw it in my head, and that was, it just, so I just play it and play it and play it. And, but just as a character in the film, what music does is, I feel like, we have certain soundtracks in our lives, and when you go throughout history, even your own personal history, it's like Belle Biv DeVoe's Poison is like, or No Scrubs is like, whatever that is. And so it's the same thing with, I think there's a lot of forgotten music throughout history, black music, that we just kind of, if we don't kind of capture it right now and kind of lock it in for the next generation, we may just forget about it. We run the risk of missing out on like the kind of John Coltrane, Miles Davis vibe, and even Motown. Everybody, it's on commercials and stuff, and a lot of people know about it. But it was the music of young people, and I think people forget about it today because it seems like, oh, that's something old folks listen to. But this was music done by young people. Diana Ross and the Supremes were like young when they did that. They were teenagers. They were like Mary J. Blige of the time, like for my generation. Who would it be now? But no, I'm all Lizzo. They were like,
Sure.
but
Would
it's
it
just
be? Who would it be?
I don't
Who
know.
would it be?
Who's the Diana Ross in this?
Would Diana Ross be today?
Yeah, who is our Diana Ross of today?
Rihanna? No.
Beyonce, Rihanna?
Beyonce.
Maybe.
Okay, consensus.
So
So
yeah, it's
Diana
just-
Ross was the biggest female.
Oh, without a doubt.
Oh.
That's why she was the star of Mahogany and all these movies. I mean, she was definitely. But I'm just saying that, music is something, especially for black folks, it's like a really kind of like these kind of milestones in our lives. I think we always, think about our weddings and the way they are. It's a big part of our lives. And so music goes hand in hand with love for me. I mean, every love story that I love has a great love song, Even the Love Jones soundtrack, when we think about all these great movies. So, but it's a character in the movie because it also talks about, it's a point where we connect with each other and where we have common interest with each other, and often men and women, it's a place where men and women connect. It's like over a song that we love. So.
And I love when you can read a script and then you see all the songs come up and you pause and you play the songs while you're reading. Like, that's the
Yeah.
best feeling. And that was the entire script. I think every 3 pages there was a new song that we're putting in.
Yeah.
They didn't
yeah.
all make the film, but
No, we
They were in the
couldn't
script.
afford it. But but a lot of them are in there, though. We have a really great, really chronicles the era pretty well. But also, just talking about, Robert and the band come to town, and they're trying to, they have aspirations to be successful in music, and it's an interesting thing. What you witnessed there is kind of the death of jazz into the birth of Motown. And I don't know if anybody knows this. I was an R&B artist in the 90s.
hey.
And I remember when hip hop was coming in, and all of the Boys to Men and all the people in my zone would start disappearing. So it's an interesting thing that happens. With jazz, black folks stopped listening to it when we couldn't dance to it anymore. It was like all of a sudden it became really heady and sophisticated in a different way when it was just an intellectual kind of pursuit. But jazz in the beginning was something that we all danced to. So it's just funny that's kind of, Motown was coming in, and your character, as you know, deals with it. Deals with the death of his love and the music that he really appreciates, and this whole new kind of pop thing coming in. So.
It's cool to hear that you kind of included music in the script, like you said, every couple of pages. But I'm curious to know how familiar Tessa and Nnamdi were you with music of that era, and was there anything about music of that era that you learned, or you come out of it with new artists that you enjoy?
I was pretty familiar. I've been listening to jazz and to Motown since I was really young. My dad's a musician, so I sort of came from that space. My dog is named Coltrane, after Alice, though. Yeah, so I was pretty familiar, actually. I think it reignited, though, like every project I do, I tend to listen to and ingest media from that time. So that's what I did a lot of, and some of those songs I haven't listened to in a long time. There's an app that I love called Radio with 5 O's, and you can go anywhere in the globe and set a time period, like by decade. So you could go to Ethiopia in 1970, which is my favorite station. It's so good. Ethiopian music in the 70s is so lit. Listen to it. But I was always in the United States between the 50s and 60s when we were making this film. And you can listen to what would have been on the radio, what would have been popular. You can change by tempo, or what you would have heard in a taxi at the time, for example. So there were artists definitely more in the big band stuff. Like I didn't listen to a lot of big band because I was like a depressive teenager, you know. So I was listening to like Miles Davis kind of blue, you know, and you know, Billie Holiday and stuff like that. So I listened to a lot more big band stuff during this time, and sort of the quartets and you know jazz sort of duos, trios that would have been like what Robert would have been playing at the time, which I wasn't as familiar with.
But she was a great DJ. So every morning in the trailers when we would go and we'd be getting ready, she would have a new playlist. She was good for the first couple of weeks. And then we kicked her out. But she was doing really good. And she had all of the music of the era. So yeah, it was a big, I mean, it was everything really. I think Nancy Wilson was the big one for us. I think every Nancy Wilson song, by the end of the shoot, we knew them. Every interview that she had ever done, we knew those interviews, and it was important. And then Eugene just has a wealth of knowledge with music. So if you come into a situation thinking that you understand the 50s and 60s, which I did, you know, I knew a lot of the music of that time. You know, every time I go into a character, I think the first thing that I look for is the music to help me sort of drop in. But he had music that no one's heard of. You know what I mean? Like, he was pulling out some Stevie Wonder stuff that had never been released, or just some tracks that he had a hold of that you just couldn't find anywhere. So,
but Nnamdi likes to get amped up though, because he would just be like, "Yo, Gene, play that song, play that Fool's Fall in Love."
On
like
set,
right before he would do his seed, I would like be holding it on my phone, playing it to him. He'd be like, "Yeah, I'm in it."
And then he'd say action, and then I'll go. But yeah, it was a big thing. You know, I love music. I think we all do. That's why it was so great to have it.
Awesome. I would love to hear from everybody up here the importance of a film like this where we see two Black characters falling in love. Like, why is this something that we need now?
Yeah, I think we're all gonna have a.
Because we don't see it just in its simplicity. We don't see it without something in the background that really becomes the foreground of the film. So to have the purest sense of love, to see something that is equivalent to the kind of relationship that you see in The Notebook, but with people that look like us, was extremely important to why I wanted to make the film, and I think why all of us wanted to make the film. And I just have to say that, you know, Tessa and Nnamdi, you all have just brought so much to this project, personally and professionally, and it's been such an honor to work with you and have you all just really contribute to what Sylvie has become, because I think Eugene did such a wonderful job of putting together a script that's been developed over time, and that he's always been so open to notes from people to continue to evolve this into something as special as we think that we have here with the film and that we're excited to share. But just the fingerprints that Nnamdi and Tessa and the rest of the team collectively have put on this has been, you know, just a real wonderful experience to be a part of, and we're happy to share it.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it was what I find what was really remarkable to me is just how invested everyone else is in it. This is not, you know, my name is certainly on it, but this is definitely not just my film. This is everybody's film who worked on it. And it's really, it's all of your film too. I mean, we're really kind of just trying to make something that we saw missing. We're trying to make a film that didn't exist. And that's really why it's so necessary. It's just, we're only seeing a very specific and small part of what we are, and we just have such a broad range that we have to kind of start to carve out all of it. Like I said, since we don't get to make too many movies, we have to kind of get, like, we prioritize, like, we need to do this one, we need to do Frederick Douglass' story, we need to do that. I get it. But we also need to start getting into these nuanced stories of who we really are, you know, because we know who we are. And now we just need to start showing it to the world and to each other. That's it.
I'm always curious to know kind of what it takes to get a film off the ground. So I guess Eugene and Gabrielle, you can speak to this. Like, when you were bringing the idea of Sylvie's Love to people, kind of what was that process? Like, what were you hearing back? How did this get off the ground and onto our screens?
I mean, it was a...
No. That's what he was hearing.
Yeah,
back.
that's really it. It's just tenacity. You just have to be willing to kind of keep going at it. I mean, we've been trying to get this happening for a long time, and people would come on and then they'd leave or whatever. And it wasn't too long before we met Nnamdi, and he really kind of jumped in, and then Tessa came on, and you know, then we knew we were cooking. But yeah, it's just really about, you're gonna hear no. No is the average, you know, and you just get used to it and just be like, wait for that one yes, wait for that one person to be like, this is really, you know, this is something spectacular, and they're aligned with your vision, and then things will fall in place. But if you give up, it'll never happen. There's certainly many times where I wanted to give up, and I did give up, and put it away for a minute, came back to it. You know, I did another, you know, work on something else, come back to it. You know, you could hear Martin Scorsese just talked about that. It took him, and he's Martin Scorsese, it took him, 40 years to make The Irishman. I mean,
That's why he had to de-age everybody.
That's what's up. That's what's up. That's what's up.
I think one thing that is unfortunately still true about our industry is that Hollywood needs to have an example of something that's come before to make room for something else. They need a comp. And when you talk about a film like this, when a film like this hasn't existed many times, you're more likely to get a no because they can't point to something and say, like, there's a market for this. And so I think sort of answering your previous question, which had to do why this is important, is I would love to just normalize our stories. It feels like it's always of note. Like, I remember, I won't name who, but somebody actually that works here at the festival ran into me. They were a little tipsy, and they were like, so jazzed about the film. They're like, we love your movie, and we're so excited to have it. It's like, you know, and they name all these classic films. It's like this, except there's one thing different. And I was like, huh? And I was like, that we're black? And he was like, the person was like, yes. You know, as if it was like something that was so like, can you believe it, you know? And bless him, because he's partially responsible that we're here. So thank you very much to that person. And all the programmers and Sundance. This is a very lit Sundance, a very black Sundance. I'm very happy to be here at this time. But I will say, I would love to get to the point where that doesn't feel like something that is of note, where it's just something that gets to exist. I say this often, and some people like it and some people don't. We talk about, like, female filmmakers, for example, and I'm like, to me, the mark of true equality will be when we get to be mediocre and make a lot of films, because men have been doing that for years. And it's not to say that men don't make exquisite films, but they get to make bad films and then make many more and get better at it. And women should be able to have the same luxury, and so should non-binary people. So I feel like inside of a story like this, you get to say, like, okay, if this does well, then we just make room. And then we get to hopefully get to the space where we normalize these stories, where it's not something to write home about, where it's not something to congratulate oneself about because you let it in as a gatekeeper. And that to me is something that's really inspiring about making films like this.
So I'm glad you mentioned the filmmakers and making films, because I'm curious to know, and anybody can answer this, being on set, what was it like? Like, who's behind the camera on this project? Like, what does the diversity behind the scenes look like?
Yeah, we had Christian Epps, who's a really terrific, is our chief lighting technician. I mean, he worked on all the Spike Lee stuff. He worked on Mo Better Blues, so he really knew how to like light the club scene, which is, you'll get to know the Blue Morocco. You know, you have to kind of think about that. It was very important on my set and our set. We talked about it. It was definitely, for me, it was, you know, we talked about hiring women, hiring people of color. You know, we also had a very small amount of time, so a lot of people weren't available. You know, people were working on other projects. So that's another challenge too, is that, you know, you want it to be as diverse as possible, but you also have to get it. You also have a very finite amount of time to work on things. So, and if you're doing something for a lower budget, you know, some people who are more accomplished, you know, they have fees, and you shouldn't expect them to just work on your movie just because it's a black movie too. You know, they're getting paid more for doing something else. So it's just, you know, we have to work all of those things out, I think. But you just try your best. You know, you do that, and you're conscious of it, and just even thinking about it at least is where you have to start. You know, if you're not thinking about it at all, like you just we just hire this person. If you're not, hold on, wait a minute, we got to kind of think about this. You know.
And Namdi and Tessa, does it make it, I guess, I don't want to say easier, but a little more freeing to be on a set where you are also represented behind the camera?
Yeah, in theory. I mean, yeah, of course. It's a tricky thing for me to answer, because the truth is, it's very, very rare as a woman to be inside of those experiences still. Because by and large, you know, when we talk about crew, it's still like overwhelmingly male, and that is just true. And it's not that the talent doesn't exist. I think it just, we have to upend the system a little bit to be able to give folks opportunities. And there are a number of people that I feel really grateful to look across the room, like Angela Robinson, that are doing that work really robustly. And Alma Harrell and different filmmakers that want to create avenues for us. But yeah, I think in terms of not feeling otherized, for sure, you know, I think there's a kind of like exhale that you have. But that's not to say, I mean, I think the truth is to work with anyone that's like-minded. And you can't expect just because someone else is a woman that they think like you. I mean, there are plenty of women that are as interested in protecting patriarchy as men are. So I don't think you can make those assumptions just based purely on gender. So in this case, I think, you know, to get to work with people that are sensitive, that want to take notes. I mean, you know, for me, I think it is probably obvious I have a lot of opinions and things to say. So I feel lucky to get to work with people that, you know, that are sensitive to that. And certainly it meant a lot to me to have Gabrielle on the project, to have another, you know, woman as a producer on the project, and, you know, someone that's making sure in a narrative that's a two-hander that the woman is represented. And yeah, I think those things are important. And also, for my money, it's not even like it's in terms of the optics of it, or like politically what it means to have a balanced set. It's just more fun. And if you're trying to make work that reflects the world in which we live, then shouldn't it look like the world in which we live? And you look around this room right now, there's a lot of women in it. So, like, why not? We should be on sets in real ways, and not just in the departments where we have typically, historically been put. We should get to work all over a set. And that's something that I obviously am like, really passionate about and want to fight for. And I think it just takes adjusting a little bit. Like I remember talking to Ava DuVernay when she was making A Wrinkle in Time, and it was incredibly important to her that her crew was really representative. And what it meant is that she had to ask her people to crew up differently. She had to ask her DP, her cameramen, to not just hire their friends, which is what we do, and that makes sense. Everyone wants to work with people that are familiar. But if we're trying to change what it looks like on a set, and we're trying to really make sure that they're representative, it means that sometimes you don't just call your friend that you've worked with on the past 5 features. You give an opportunity to someone else that is skilled and gifted and hasn't had those opportunities. And she asked her filmmakers to do that on A Wrinkle in Time, and she had a hugely diverse representative set, and people thanked her at the end of it, saying, I've made these contacts with people that I would not ordinarily have worked with, and it's changed my trajectory and my work life. And I think that's the thing, is we get swept up in these conversations around diversity and representation, and it feels like a cross we have to bear, as opposed to a challenge that is fun and exciting, to like look across the room and find someone that is not exactly like you and be like, let's tell a story together. Like let's let our differences make us better and help us to make stories that are more interesting and new and unique and singular. Like that should just be fun, I think.
Yeah, it's not automatic that if you work with people that look like you behind the camera that it's gonna be great and it's gonna work out. But it still feels good. And for me, it definitely felt good to see people that look like me there, because there's sort of there's like an energy or a confidence that I can't really explain that you feel. It's almost like when you're walking down the street and there's a sea of people that don't look like you, and then you see your brother, and you're like, "What's up, man? What's up?" Man? You know what I mean? And you feel that, And so I think it was great for me personally to have a black male director, working on this film, because he could look at me and say,
Hey, handsome.
Actually, I called him Chocolate Redford on set.
Oh yeah, you did. I forgot about that.
What are we doing? What are we doing, guys?
Chocolate Redford. It's no wonder we're here at the Sundance Film Institute to debut Chocolate Robert Redford.
Yes.
Chocolate Redford.
I'm gonna turn this thing off.
So lastly, for all of you, I'm just curious to know, what is the message that you want people to take away from this film?
I mean, for me, it's just not to be cynical about love. I mean, it's, we just I think we live in a time where we really just need to kind of, you talked about it earlier, just go into a dark theater and surrender ourselves to something, that the possibility of what love can be, or it's just let something wash over you instead of just kind of like analyzing everything and it's just, we just want you to have a great time and have that type of experience that you had when you watched something like Love Jones for the first time, or The Way We Were, or those movies that we talked about, because it did something for me, and I want, that's my original thought, is that I want other people to feel that way, and I want to create something that makes people feel that way, and fortunately I found a whole crew and cast of like-minded people who wanted to do the same thing, and I think we did it. Hopefully we did it. You be the judge, but I think we did.
I think we should bring back picnics and making out in cars. That's what I hope this. People stop doing that, especially when you get to a certain age and you have homes. You just make out in them. I think adults should make out in cars for longer periods of time.
I'm small nowadays.
I know,
The
but that.
space is not
I
there.
know the space. You're right. It's not as roomy, but I just think there's something nice about that. And picnics. Nobody picnics anymore. I'm being totally serious.
She's letting you know about some things you're going to see in the movie. Is what she's
Spoiler
doing.
alert.
She's tricking y'all.
I feel like it's going to be poignant. No, it's not. Yes, it is. So we're going to end with Gabby so that she can put a nice button on it. So for me, I just want people to fall in love with love. You know, it's just very simple. It's going to be on the screen. It's not going to be, you know, a bunch of car crashes and, you know, people getting, it's just two people that are falling in love over a summer. They break up, they go their separate ways. 5 years later, they reconnect and they realize that they still have feelings for each other, but their lives have taken different turns. And you fight for them, you know. I think even as we watch it, we still fight for them. So you're fighting for this love. And I think if people can just sit down, relax, and know that they're going to fall in love with love again, I think that could be a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think all of that. And for me, it's also just ushering in the possibility of new storytelling, new narratives, and just things that we haven't seen on screen, and that it hopefully inspires people to follow their pursuit, follow their storytelling inspirations to create something special. So just new narratives, I think, is something that we want to really push with this film coming out. And then I would just say the other thing for me is that even though this is a period piece, there's so many things that are so relevant. So the fashion, the music is all from that period, but I feel we've tried to really put forth those aspects of the film, which are important ones, in a really meaningful way that's going to resonate with our audiences that haven't lived in that period. They've heard about that period, but we've tried to contemporize it and modernize it in a way that's still keeping the integrity of that time.
But it's also, it's a really sexy movie. And that's the thing. It's a really, these two together, like, you know, come on. Coco Streisand, Chocolate Redford. Just remember.
Yes.
Coco Streisand. I love that.
Yes.
I'm loving these nicknames, and I really hope they pick up
Oh
steam.
my God, that's my Finsta name, Coco Streisand. Whoa, I'll take it.
So I want to thank you all for stopping by Macro to have this conversation with me, and thank you all for joining in. Make sure to check out Sylvie's Love Tomorrow. It makes its world premiere, 12:15 at Eccles Theater, and there will be additional screenings. Please, please, please make sure you check out this film.
Thank you.
Yeah.